All right, welcome back. So we're going to try and finish out this chapter 3 midterm. So we left off with bacteria. So this is strep and staph bacteria. Okay. So coccus literally means that it's in a circle, right? Each of these are little circles. Okay. So strep is where it goes in a long chain. Staph is where it's in clusters, where it's all packed together. Okay. All right. So, those are just two very common forms of bacteria to find. There's bacilli, which are rod-shaped. There's spirochetes. There's all sorts. So these are just kind of the most common that cause bacterial infections in humans. So some more terminology. Erythrocytes, we talked about this a bit. Red blood cells. Erythro means red. Leukocytes are white blood cells. Those are immune cells. Leuko means white. Cyte means cell. All right, so thrombocytes, these are clotting cells. These are things that stick together, help form clots or scabs. Okay, also known as platelets. Erythrocytes, the red blood cells, are made in your bone marrow. They carry oxygen from your lungs to all of your body cells, so they have hemoglobin in it, which is your blood protein, and it has 4 different active sites. It kind of looks like a square, and it's got 4 active sites, and it can carry 2 oxygen molecules. Because an oxygen molecule is O2, so there's 2 atoms of oxygen in every gas molecule of oxygen. So it has 4 of them that bond to all the 4 sites. Okay. Now, leukocytes, these are white blood cells. These are your immune cells. So there's different leukocytes, and they're kind of divided into what kind of characteristics they have. So there's granulocytes, and then there's mononuclear leukocytes. Mono means one, nuclear means it has a nucleus, so 1 nucleus leukocytes. So the granulocytes, there's 3 types of them. So there's eosinophils, basophils, and neutrophils. All right. The mononuclear leukocytes, there's lymphocytes, and then there's monocytes. Okay, lymphocytes are found specifically in your lymphatic system. Thrombocytes, these are your platelets. Okay, so they're blood cells that are formed in the bone marrow, and they're necessary for clotting. So if you take aspirin actually makes the platelets slick and not able to stick together as well. Which is why aspirin is great when you have a heart attack happening, and it kind of helps the blood move along through because it's not as sticky. Okay, it can kind of help buy you time until you can get to the hospital. Right, so your erythrocytes, these red blood cells, they have kind of looks like a donut, but there's not a hole in the center. Right, so there's like a divot on either side, and it's circular. Okay, they don't have a nucleus, right? It's a protein. Okay, the leukocytes. So here's an eosinophil. This is a basophil. And this is a neutrophil. Okay. And then you have your mononuclears. All right. So these have 1 nucleus, whereas these have multiple, right? They can have 2, 3, whatever. Okay. And then you have thrombocytes, which are these down at the bottom. Okay. Now, which of these blood cells are necessary for clotting? So what sticks together? Erythrocytes are red blood cells. Granulocytes are types of leukocytes. Monocytes are types of leukocytes. And thrombocytes are platelets. So if you said platelets, which is thrombocytes, you're right. So, acromegaly. So I mentioned that it was suspected that Abraham Lincoln had acromegaly because later on in life, his hands got much bigger and longer. Same with his feet. And then also, like his nose got astronomically bigger. His ears did as well. So this is generally caused by an endocrine disorder. And It happens when your pituitary gland in your brain puts off a lot of GH, or growth hormone, after puberty. So generally, it's because a tumor is putting pressure on that pituitary gland and causing it to misfunction. So generally, your person's going to be normal height, so they'll stay the same height, but the tissues and bones in their hands, feet, and face grow abnormally. So kind of they get abnormally large in comparison to the rest of their body. Splenomegaly. So spleno means your spleen. Okay. Megaly is an enlargement. So this occurs with excessive hemolysis. So when your red blood cells are destroyed. If your spleen becomes enlarged and bursts, you can bleed out internally and not really realize it's an actual medical emergency. So the spleen is considered one of the not so necessary organs. It can be removed, and the rest of your body can compensate without the spleen. Next, you have a laparoscopy. Okay, this is minimally invasive. They only make 2 or 3 small little incisions. I had one of these done myself. And this is where they kind of fill your abdomen with air so that they can look around. And they do a visual examination of your abdominal cavity with a scope. And they're able to sometimes cut away some tissue. They can take pictures. Okay, they can look for disease. They can look to double check to make sure certain internal surgeries were done properly if they have to double check them. Okay, so, but this is one of the minimally invasive surgeries that you don't have a whole lot of openings. Like, it's not taking an incision and going several inches long. It's very, very small. Your adenoids. So these are part of your lymphatic system. They're masses of lymphatic tissue, and they're located in your pharynx, near the nose, and your nasal passages. Okay, so these are at the very back of your throat, like up in your nasal passages a little bit. You can have an adenoidectomy if they become enlarged or block the airway from the nose to the pharynx. So the whole point of adenoids is to trap bacteria and viruses and be able to break them down in the lymph of the gland. And if it becomes impaired in any way or becomes a hindrance instead of a help, they can be removed. So these are some of the pronunciations. So when you're trying to sound out all of these words, okay, all of your vowels can have a short sound or a long sound. So an A can be long as an ape or short as an apple. It can be long, an E can be long as an even and short as an every, right? So, and it can make the word sound completely different. So acute has a short A and a long U. Basophil has a long A and a long O and a short I, right? So as you're trying to pronounce things, keep in mind your vowels could have a short or a long sound. Okay, so that is chapter 3. Okay, let's get into chapter 4. So I'm going to go here. All right, voila. So chapter 4 in the term book, this focuses more on prefixes. And it's being able to combine the prefixes with other parts of the word. And we're also going to learn about the RH condition as part of an antigen-antibody reaction. So this is common when you have an expectant mother. If they are RH negative and the baby is RH positive, then the body will actually attack the baby. So there's usually some sort of suppressant shots that they give expectant mothers that are RH negative, just in case. So, some prefixes, These are combining forms. They're giving you more combining forms. There's the prefixes, so we'll get to it. All right, so carpal, like carpal tunnel, are the bones in your wrist, okay? Carpal means wrist bones. SIBO means meals, okay? Siso is to cut, so an incision is basically to cut into, siso. Costo is rib, so costochondritis is inflammation of the ribs and the cartilage. Cutaneal is skin, like cutaneous tissue. The layer underneath your true skin, your dermis, is your subcutaneous tissue. Dactylo, this is fingers or toes. Oh gosh, I'm trying to find. Polydactyly is where you have too many fingers or toes. Okay, like if you had a sixth finger or a sixth toe. Ducto, this is to lead or carry, like duct work for your HVAC system, like your heat and your AC generally runs through ducts in the house to blow out a vent to warm or cool your house down. Duct is to lead or carry. Flexo, this means to bend, like flexion means to bend. Extension is to straighten. Flexion is to bend. Furco, this is forking or branching. Glosso, this is your tongue. Glossal. Glyco, this is sugar, like hypoglycemia, hyperglycemia. Immuno is protection. So immunology is the study of the immune system, which protects your body. Morpho is shape or form. If somebody morphs into something, like the Mighty Morphing Power Rangers, morph, they change shape or form, or in that case, they change clothing. Morto, that's death. So if you are a mortal, that means that you can die. If you're an immortal, that means you can't die. Nati is birth. If you are native to a country, you are a person that was born in that country. Necto, this is to bind, tie, or connect. Can't really think of an example of necto. Like connect. If you connect two things, you bind them together. Normal, rule or order. If something is normal, it generally follows the rules, right? Oxo, that's oxygen. Like hypoxemia is a condition of low oxygen level in the blood, hypoxemia. Pubo is the pubis or the anterior portion of the pelvic or hip bone. Pubo. Sepso, like sepsis, is a condition of having an infection. Somno is sleep, like insomnia, where you can't sleep. Sono is sound. So a sonogram uses sound to develop a picture. The or theo is to put or place. Thelo or thelio is the nipple. Okay, like mothers breastfeed through their nipple. Thyro, like the thyroid gland or shield. Top or topo is place, position, or location. Like topography or topographic means place. Tax or taxo is poison. If it's toxic, right, that means it's poisonous to you. You'll look on crayons and it'll say non-toxic, which means it's not toxic or not poisonous. Trachea refers to the trachea or windpipe, which is right here. Trachea. Urethra is the urethra. This is what connects your bladder, your urinary bladder, to the outside world. Urethra. That's what you urinate from. Blast is embryonic or immature. Like an osteoblast is an immature bone cell. Crin is to secrete, like an endocrine secretes hormones into the bloodstream. Crin. Drome means to run. Drome. Fusion, coming together or to pour. So if you fuse two things together, you connect them together. Fusion. Like you could go to a Asian Mexican fusion restaurant where they take the two different types of food and blend them together. Or they may offer both of them on their menu. Gia, substance that produces. Lapse. If something lapses, it falls or it sags or it stops. Okay. Lysis means to break down or separate. So to break down like Lysol, right, breaks down bacteria and viruses. Hemolysis is the breakdown of blood. And the meter is to measure. Meter. Like a barometer measures barometric pressure. Mission is to send. Or is one who. Like an orator is one who speaks. Oxia, this stands for oxygen, like hypoxia. Partum, birth, labor. So if people have postpartum depression, that means after birth depression. Phoria, to bear, carry, or feeling. Like euphoria, it's where you feel elated. Physis is to grow. Plasia is formation or growth, like hyperplasia is an excessive growth. Plasm is a structure or formation, like neoplasm, cytoplasm. Nia with a P is breathing, like apnea is an absence of breathing. Because if you put A over top, like in front of a medical terminology word, that negates it. Ptosis, this is falling, dropping, or prolapse. Rhea is flow or discharge, like diarrhea is a flow or discharge of everything. Stasis, stopping or controlling, like epistasis, is to control something above. Trophy, development or nourishment, like hypertrophy is excessive development. Okay, so when we get to the actual prefixes, A negates it, right? Means no, not, or without. It's a negative. It's like putting a negative sign in front of a number. It negates it, makes it the opposite. Ab, away from. You have different types of muscles. You have abductor muscles and you have adductor muscles. Ab points away from. Adductors mean like add, like if you add to something, it goes in towards the body. Adductor. Ab with a B is away from. Anna is up or apart. Anti is before or forward, like anterior, right? In front of, forward. Anti is against. Auto is by itself or on its own. If you automate something, it just does things on its own. Bi is two. Like a bicycle has two wheels. Bi. If something is bilateral, it's both sides. Brady is slow. Bradycardia is a condition where you breathe too slow or your heart beats too slow. Bradypnea is where you breathe too slow. So bradycardia is your heart beating too slow. Bradypnea is your breathing too slow. Cata. Cata is down. Like catalyst means down, to break down. Con means with or together. Like construct, so, bind things together. Contra is against or opposite, like contrast. D is down or lack of. Dia is through or complete. Dis, bad, painful, difficult, abnormal. So if somebody has difficulty breathing, they could have dyspnea or dyspnea. Dyspnea. Eek or ecto is out or outside. Ectoplasm is the fluid outside. Endo means within. Like humans have an endoskeleton. Their skeletons are housed within our bodies. There are insects in the world that have an exoskeleton, which is on the outside of the body. Epi means above or upon, like the epigastric section of your abdomen, above your stomach. U is good or normal, like euphoria is a good feeling. X, like exoskeleton, talked about that. Hemi is half. So hemiplegia is, let me see, paralysis. Hemiplegia is a weakening of one side of your body. Generally happens after a stroke. Hyper is excessive or above, like hyperglycemia. Hypo is deficient, like hypoglycemia. Okay. In means not, but it can also mean into or within. Infra, like infrastructure, is beneath or under. Inter is in between, like an interface is generally what goes in between maybe two screens. You have an interface on a computer, something like that. Intra is within or into, like an intravenous goes into the vein. Macro is large, like micro is very small, macro is very large. Okay, so notice there's micro, which is very small. Mal is bad. Generally in every other Latin-based language or Germanic-based language, mal means bad. Malnourished is bad nourishment. Malaise is a bad feeling. Meta means to change. Like metacognition is changing the way you think. I talked about micro being small, like microscopic. Neo is new, like a neonate is a new being. Pan is all, like a pandemic is an infection across a large area. Okay. Para is abnormal, beside, or near. Okay. Per is through. Peri is around, like perimeter. Poly is many or much, like polytheism is like Greek mythology where they have many gods that they worship. Post is after or behind, like your posterior, your derriere, your rear. Pre is before or in front of. Pro is before or forward, like prognosis is before knowledge, right? Like a diagnosis is after they already have the knowledge, they've already done diagnostics, and they get the diagnosis from the diagnostics. Pros is before or forward. Re is back again, like rewind. Retro, behind, backwards. If somebody wears clothes that were popular in like the 70s or 80s, somebody could say that is so retro. That's from, way back when. Sub is under or beneath. Supra is above. Supra. Syn or sim is together, like a symphony is all the people playing music together. Symbiosis is a mutualistic relationship where organisms work together. Tachy is fast, like tachycardia. Trans, across or through, like if you transect something, you go through it. Ultra is beyond or excess. So an ultrasound is excess sound, and it winds up creating a picture based off of that sound. And then uni is one, like a unicycle. You see generally at a circus is one wheel, as opposed to a bicycle has two. All right, so I talked about the type of muscles that draws a limb towards the body. Now, this is really be really careful because you have the OR and you have the ER. Okay, and then you have ADD, ABD, ADD, ABD. Okay, so if it's towards the body, it like adds to the mass, right? So ADD, abductor goes away, right? So we can automatically rule out B and D. So we're left with A and C. So adductor, it would be C, are the muscles that move limbs towards the body. Now, which one of these means painful breathing? Let's think of breathing, okay? Breathing is the ending NEA, P-N-E-A, P-N-E-A, okay? Algia is pain. Plasia is shape. Okay, dysplasia means that it's got an abnormal shape. If we put an A in front of a word, it negates it, so that's no breathing. Okay, so we can automatically rule this one out, and this one out. So we're left with dyspnea. Dys means painful or difficult. Last but not least, RH condition. So RH is what's found on in your blood cells, and it's what's called an I guess an antigen. So I'm sorry, an antibody. An RH is an antibody, right? So it's a protein that's made by your white blood cells in response to an antigen, right? So let me see. It's been a long time since I did RH. Here we go. So it's where you have a condition that develops when there is a difference in RH blood factor between that of a pregnant mother, RH negative, and that of the fetus, RH positive. So if you don't have this antigen in your body, okay, then your body starts producing antibodies to fight it. So if all of a sudden you have this RH positive presence in your body as a pregnant woman, the pregnant mother would start creating antibodies to try to defeat the RH positive in this fetus, and ultimately you'll wind up miscarrying the fetus in most cases. So an antigen is something that can cause a reaction, and an antibody is what fights a foreign substance. Okay, so this gives you in pictorial form. Now you can usually get through the first pregnancy, but generally if you have any more after that, your body starts fighting it because it hasn't realized it. So say this is an RH negative mother, right? All the negatives around it, that's the mother's condition. They don't have an RH factor. So the RH positive antigen in the baby is there. And then the body is just like, oh, crap, there's this foreign substance inside my body. I'm going to start, producing these antibodies. Okay, and usually it happens too late to really pose a threat to the baby. So it's just like when you're allergic to something, generally you don't have that bad of a reaction the first time you're exposed to it, but it could be life-threatening when you're exposed to it after that. So generally, people found out that they were allergic to peanuts, generally not the first time they ate them, but probably sometime after that when they developed antibodies to that substance. Okay, so the second pregnancy, if the RH positive baby is there, then all of a sudden the body has figured out, hey, I have all these antibodies that are meant to attack this antigen. So then the mother's body starts attacking the baby. Antibodies are made by what type of cell? Platelets, leukocytes, thrombocytes, or erythrocytes. So platelets are thrombocytes. So they deal with clotting, not necessarily fighting bodies inside of your body. Okay, thrombocytes are platelets, just another name. Erythrocytes are red blood cells. And red blood cells don't really pose a hazard to other types of cells. So leukocytes would be the answer. All right. So for right now, that's all I want to cover of chapter 14. So please, or 14. Oh, long day. Chapter 4. Okay, so please go online and work on the practice problems on Evolve, on Elsevier Evolve, and let me know if you have any issues. We can definitely do a review of this on Monday, and then I want to start working on I would like to start working on chapter 7 again.